Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Stone Chapel Podcast. I'm David Capes. Dr. Jennifer Houston McNeel joins me today to talk about a new book she's written. It's entitled Under Her Wings, Mothers and Motherhood in the New Testament. It's published by Erdman's. Now, the Stone Chapel Podcast is part of the Church Leaders Podcast Network. Our network is dedicated to providing resources to help the pastor, church leader, as they navigate through the rough cultural waters that we are in right now. This podcast focuses upon Scripture and theology. Others focus on other things. But Scripture and theology and a whole host of other related matters. You can get more information at ChurchLeaders.com/podcast network. Dr. McNeel teaches at St. Mary's Ecumenical Institute in Baltimore, Maryland. She's a young scholar who's written an important book, a unique book, that plumbs deeply into the neglected areas of the New Testament. There's a lot of great payoff in getting a copy of her book and reading it for yourself. So today, Mothers and Motherhood in the New Testament with Dr. Jennifer Houston McNeel here on the Stone Chapel Podcast.
My name is Jennifer Houston McNeel, and I am a New Testament professor at the St. Mary's Ecumenical Institute in Baltimore, Maryland.
Dr. Jennifer Houston McNeel, good to see you. Welcome to the Stone Chapel Podcast.
Thank you very much for having me.
You've written a terrific book called Under Her Wings, Mothers and Motherhood in the New Testament. We're going to talk about that in a minute, but before we do that, I want people to get a sense of who you are. So for those who don't know, who is Jennifer Houston McNeel?
Yeah, thank you. I teach New Testament in Baltimore, Maryland. It's the St. Mary's Ecumenical Institute, which is part of St. Mary's Seminary, which is the oldest Roman Catholic seminary in the United States.
Oh, I didn't know that. Wow.
It is. But I teach in the Ecumenical Institute division of the school, so I teach students who come from a whole variety of Christian denominations and traditions. Almost all of them that you could think of we get at the school. So it's a really rich, diverse learning environment to be part of. And we practice our civil conversations with each other, even when we disagree.
And there's probably a lot of disagreement in that group, I would imagine.
There is, yeah. But it works anyway. People come there knowing that they're going to be learning alongside of people who come from different backgrounds than they do. And so they're eager to have that experience.
Well, Mike Gorman is a colleague of yours, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a friend of ours who's been here to the library. And because I'm a Pauline guy and I've studied Paul, I've read a lot with Gorman over the years. And he's spoken highly about the school. And I didn't know much about it until he went there. But it's good to have your connection now as well. Are you from Maryland originally?
I am. I grew up in Annapolis, and I live in Columbia, Maryland now.
Okay. You do a lot of commuting?
Yeah, it's only about half an hour, so it's not too bad. I don't go in every day.
Well, I'm just delighted to have this opportunity to talk about your book because I think it's an important book. It's a good book. It's the kind of book that I think New Testament scholars, but also pastors and church leaders, and really anybody that's wanting to engage Scripture deeply and significantly will find refreshing. Under Her Wings, Mothers and Motherhood in the New Testament. What's the big idea, Jennifer, of your book?
I think the big idea is twofold. First of all, as I studied all the passages in the New Testament that are either have mothers in them or have maternal themes in them, I noticed certain themes recurring over and over again. Whenever mothers or maternal images appear, there tends to be certain themes that appear. And so I took note of those and talk about them, especially in the conclusion of the book. The second part of the big idea, though, is that when we study these themes, we discover that motherhood in the New Testament is not just a peripheral idea to the New Testament, but is actually related to the heart of the gospel message that the New Testament authors are trying to share with us. So God is described as birthing and breastfeeding us. Jesus describes himself in maternal terms. Church leaders are described as being mothers to their communities. So these are all really central ideas to the message of the New Testament that's explored and expressed through maternal language.
When I was reading early in the book, I was struck by two things: how different motherhood was, but in some ways how similar it was as well. I mean, there's a similarity to mothers and motherhood in the ancient world to what's going on today, and there's also great differences as well.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, of course, we're all human beings still.
Right.
We share a lot of things in common, a lot of experiences and emotions that we share in common with the people who lived 2,000 years ago. But you have to also remember that it's a very different time and a very different culture that they
Mm,
lived in. And so the social systems were different in terms of, ancient Roman patriarchal systems that governed women's lives, as well as medical understandings and understandings of the body, being different at that time, which
mm,
leads to differences in how motherhood is viewed and experienced.
yeah, and there was a sense in which women were deficient in some sense. I mean, in the ancient world, women were inferior to men. So women had a ways to go. They started with a deficit. They needed the help, as it were. But the gospel itself seems to me to be doing something for mothers and motherhood. Would you agree with that?
I mean, it's very interesting to me how we have maternal language expressed by such a variety of people in the New Testament. So Jesus
Mm,
talks about himself as a mother hen. Paul talks about himself as a mother. So we have these male figures in the New Testament using maternal language.
mm,
I do think that has the potential, I guess I should say, to draw mothers into the story and say, okay, this story is in some way relevant to me. These
mm,
theological meanings are in some way
mm.
relevant to me. The whole breadth of human experience really is incorporated into this gospel message about Jesus.
And it seems to me, too, the gospel is elevating women in general and putting them on a little different stance than they had before. Maybe not a little bit, a lot different stance than they had before. And I love that passage in Acts where Peter says, about Pentecost, this is that which was spoken by the prophet Joel. In the last days, your sons and daughters will prophesy. And that seems to me to be one of those places where we're keyed into the fact that when the gospel takes root, it is insistently improving the lives and the fortunes of people who are marginalized, who are suffering,
Hmm.
who are in second place, as it were.
Right. And when I hear you say that, one of the mothers of the New Testament comes to mind, which is Mary and her
Yeah.
Magnificat.
Oh, absolutely.
Mary proclaiming that, the ones who are or have lifted themselves up are going to be brought down, and the lowly will be exalted. So that really is at the heart of the message.
Yeah. What is fascinating is you get the last chapter as well because you talk about an image in the book of Revelation. I think it's a dragon in the delivery room or something like that.
Hmm.
So that's a brilliant way of putting it. You take real people like Mary of Nazareth, but you also take this figurative person that's described in I think it's Revelation 12, something like that.
Right. So I spend a lot of time on the quote unquote real mothers of the Gospels, for example, the women who appear in the Gospels who are
Hmm.
mothers. But then in the later parts of the New Testament, I spend more of my time on the figurative language of the New
Hmm.
Testament around motherhood and these symbolic figures, because that's the way that motherhood shows up more often in the letters of the New Testament and in Revelation.
Well, one of the themes that you highlight is the one of suffering there.
Hmm.
Motherhood and suffering. Would you unpack that a little bit for us?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think that goes a little bit back to what you were saying earlier about some of the differences between life today and life in the ancient world. One of those really important differences for mothers between life today and life in the ancient world was how dangerous it was to give birth in the ancient world. It was many, many, many times more likely. Some historians estimate perhaps as much as like 200 times more likely that a woman in labor would die in childbirth as compared to a place like the United States today. So women who were pregnant were facing that reality, right? So right
Mm.
from the beginning, before motherhood even, has gotten very far along, you're still
Yeah,
pregnant.
yeah.
Already you're facing this idea of the possibility of death. Like that is associated with motherhood, in the minds of ancient people.
Wow. You think about new life on the one hand, the glory of new life, bringing it into the world. It was preceded by a lot of suffering,
Mm-hmm.
but it was also the possibility that the mother or the child, either the mother or the child, would survive very long.
Right. And then even going beyond childbirth itself, let's say both the mother and the child survive childbirth, the danger is not over because in the ancient world, children died at much, much higher rates than today because of diseases and infection and malnutrition and all these kinds of things. So even a mother who successfully comes through childbirth with her infant still has to face the reality that, she doesn't know if that child is going to make it to adulthood or not. It may be as high as about 50% of infants born alive don't make it to 10 years old in the ancient world. So these are kind of the reasons that the idea of suffering and danger and risk kind of swirls around motherhood in the New Testament. So we see, for example, in Matthew, in the birth story in Matthew, we have what we've come to call the slaughter of the innocents, where Herod kills all the children 2 years old and younger. And we have an image of motherhood is given to us there in the text, the idea of Rachel weeping for her children.
Yeah, brilliant.
So that's an image that really resonates with that kind of reality that people experienced in the ancient world.
Yeah. And Rachel, as I recall, in Jeremiah, that was because the people were being marched into exile.
Right.
And many
so
of
she
them
becomes
will die along the way. She's the mother, far removed in a sense, but she's yet mother to all of these people who are going to be taken into exile. Many of those would perish on the journey because it was a brutal journey, and others would never come home. Right?
Mm-hmm.
It would be generations later before their children might be allowed to come home.
Right. So we talked earlier about, real mothers and figurative mothers. So she's kind of both at once. She's a real mother in the story in Genesis, but in Jeremiah, she becomes this sort of symbolic mother figure. She's the mother not just of Joseph and Benjamin now, but of the whole nation. And then Matthew draws on that image of Rachel as the mother of the nation to express this mourning and weeping over the slaughtered children.
Yeah. Is there a similar book to the Old Testament? It would probably be bigger than yours because there's a lot more people there. But is there a book, Under Her Wings, Mothers and Motherhood in the Old Testament? Because I'm not familiar with that.
No, there is a book by Bronner about mothers, and it wouldn't be the Old Testament because she's a Jewish author.
Right.
It's just called
Hebrew
Mothers
Bible, yeah.
in the Hebrew Bible, I think.
Right.
I'm forgetting the exact title, but there is one book I know of about mothers in what we call the Old Testament, which is that one. I'm not aware of any others.
Yeah. I was just curious about that because I didn't know if something like that might have been a good resource for you. But as a writer, what are your hopes for the book?
Well, one thing I hope is that it does the very thing we were talking about earlier in giving women a sense that they are included in the story of the New Testament, because sometimes our churches and our classrooms don't make that clear to people that women are also a part of this story and that women matter in the gospel and to Jesus and are empowered to participate in the ministry of sharing the gospel as well. Yeah. So that's one thing. Another thing, though, is that I don't actually intend the book to be only for women or only for mothers, but also for anyone interested in understanding the New Testament better. As I said before, these ideas, these maternal images are central to the heart of the gospel message as presented by the New Testament. So I hope that people who aren't mothers, including men, will be interested in learning more about that. I like to say that just because you're not a farmer doesn't mean you don't pay attention to the agricultural parables that Jesus tells, or just because you're not a fisherman, it doesn't mean you don't care about Peter, learning about Peter, right?
Exactly.
So these maternal images are really important, I think, for understanding the New Testament itself.
Dr. Jennifer Houston McNeel, thanks for being with us today on
Thank you very much.
Stone Chapel. There is so much that we didn't get to in this podcast. Okay, we got to have Jennifer back. Check out her book, Under Her Wings, Mothers and Motherhood in the New Testament with Erdman's. If you like the Stone Chapel podcast, find it helpful, please share it with friends and family. If you know a pastor or church leader in your area, send them a link to one of our episodes and ask them to take a listen. We have hundreds of podcasts over the last, 5-6 years, covering a lot of different topics. You can find all of those on either YouTube or Apple or Spotify. Thanks to Phil Keggy for our intro, outro music. Thanks to Kathy Capes for our more than competent audio editor. Thanks to Jessica Mauser and Jana Firestone of the Church Leaders Podcast Network. It takes a lot of people to make this podcast happen. Thank you to all of them. Until next time, I'm David Capes. Thanks for listening.